I'll do the review. I can get that
Metroid
fixed, but
It's Mario, but with guns. I'm just kidding.
Mario.
yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead and start your review. I'm gonna get you fixed up while you do it.
Yes, I will. I will do the review. Okay, so I played Metroid Fusion. It was developed by Nintendo R&D 1 for a November 17th, 2002 release date on the Game Boy Advance. I played it on the Game Boy Advance, kind of, but I played it on GBA via Retron 5. So I had a bunch of upscaling on, smoothing and stuff. Really made it look pretty. And not that it didn't already, because it's honestly, it might be the most beautiful 2D, other than Dread. It might be the most beautiful 2D.
Yeah, other than Dread. Are you fucking crazy?
I mean, just Dread's on another level. Like, of the classic, pixel art Metroid games.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think it's the prettiest. I actually have a student right now who's doing pixel art replication. That's the project we're doing in 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
And he's done NES Samus, Super Metroid Samus, and Fusion Samus. And he was commenting as he walked out of the classroom on Thursday. He was like, I think this is the nicest looking Samus. I think this is the best looking one.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Well, I don't know. Here's the thing. So obviously Dread looks the best, but
yeah,
I really think that Super Metroid has like almost flawless pixel art, especially for its time, but it's kind of a timeless thing. And while Fusion looks incredible, there's not as many pixels to be able to produce that beautiful of art. So certainly for what it has, I think, yes, it's the best looking Samus. But when you compare them side by side and you just have so many more pixels on the Super Nintendo, it's
but you got to compare, like, the backgrounds are better in Fusion. They're more fleshed out. The doors look more like doors. Just things look better in general. So that's one of the big things I like about the game is what they did within their own limitations of the Game Boy platform. Additionally, like, the narrative is so much clearer in this game, and really, like, this is the first time we see a Metroid game intending to be like a larger ongoing story and scary.
Yeah.
Honestly,
the scariest one.
I still say this game does Dread way better than Dread did.
Well, it does suspense better, certainly. I think Dread tried to slipstream in a few too many frightening elements between the sort of almost surprising boss fights, the just like general feeling of disorientation, and the Emmys, certainly. The Emmys, as Paul and I said, eventually kind of just got to be a nuisance.
Yeah.
They weren't particularly frightening. It was just the same thing. The Chozo, same thing, just a nuisance. The bosses were really good in Dread, but I think they were that much better in Fusion.
Yeah.
There was a lot of very specific tactical stuff that you had to do. There were a couple of boss fights, especially toward the end, where you could stand in a very specific place and be basically functionally invulnerable.
Yeah. The bosses also don't rely on cheap mechanics to get through them.
Right. It's all pattern based. It's pattern recognition. It's what you would expect from a classic Nintendo game. And that's in general, not just a Metroid game. Anybody who's played Mario or Zelda from that era has the pattern recognition skills that are required to be successful at Metroid Fusion.
Yeah.
Even a Mega Man game of that generation, you look at Zero, which came out right around the same time. It's the same sort of boss fight idea. You're locked in a room. The boss is bouncing all over the place. If there's platforms in the way, fine. Otherwise, you're just avoiding environmental hazards and boss attacks. So it very much speaks to a Mega Man mentality. So that's what I liked about the game. What I didn't like about the game is there were a couple of narrative scenes that were just a little bit slow.
Yeah.
It seemed, and they were trying to spoon feed you a little too much at the same time. Some of the dialogue could be a little heavy-handed. There was a lot of like the backtracking was very linear. It was just kind of up and down one hallway, and there was no threat within that hallway. It was just like, oh, now you have to run to Sector 5. Now you have to run across the map to Sector 3. Okay, fine. So that was just a little. It kind of dragged a little bit. The combat was fine. The sound effects were fine. Most of this game was just great and fine and unoffensive, but there were just a couple of bits that were a little bit blah.
Sure.
I guess. The story was possibly, like I said, possibly the most possibly the most information we've ever got about the Metroid franchise in a single game. Like Dread is very confined to the Dread story. It does reach back and reference Fusion a lot.
It also ties a lot of things together.
Yes.
You know, like that's I think what Dread does best is it really ties everything together in the end.
Right. And Fusion can kind of operate on its own, really. It summarizes a little bit of what's happened before then, but you don't really see a whole lot of connection to Super or Metroid or Samus Returns. It's just like, oh yeah, these are some things that happened. Here's the thing that we're doing now. You do get the Neo Ridley fight, which does call back Super Metroid and Metroid for that matter. But there's no like the baby Metroid doesn't really come into play. The space pirates do, but like this is the first time they were kind of front and center. So
baby Metroid dead.
Yes.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
It is. But like
you absorb it.
You'd think she'd call that back on more than just a cutscene at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I think that you're able to absorb the X because you absorb the Metroid.
The baby Metroid. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's like
you're right.
Whatever.
I think they also referenced the animals that you save in Super Metroid too.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, they definitely don't mention her bloodline until Dread again, though.
Correct.
Metroid Zero Mission does.
Yeah, Zero.
Well, that's Metroid 1.
Yeah, but they don't do that in Metroid 1. In Zero Mission, they go back and fill in some of that information.
Yeah. Just chronologically, though, I mean.
Sure, yeah.
That said, the story was extremely compelling, and especially having played it after Dread. Now, this is where Paul and I are going to kind of go off on a conspiracy rant for a minute.
Whoa,
because we were talking about this off air. At the end of the game, you realize that Adam, your ADAM, your onboard computer, is not behaving entirely correctly. Samus makes note of the fact that this is not how Adam would behave. This is not how this thing is supposed to be operating. And I messaged Paul and a couple other people, and I was like, "Yo, was Ravenbeak pulling the strings all the way back in Fusion?"
Yes,
I really think he was.
It certainly implies that in Dread, and that's actually one of the things that bothered me at the beginning of Dread, was that Adam before was like so reminiscent of her commander or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's dead or whatever the shit, and like she kind of relates with him, and it definitely has a very human personality. And in Dread, it felt very robotic, right? But I mean, you later find out why that is, because it's not that Adam.
Well, not only that, it was a new facility also, so it could just be a new interface, like comm system. That's the other could just been like because they're in a new area. He just did what he worked with. I don't know.
But I was just like, the more I read the communications with Adam, the computer, I was like, this seems
not your brother.
Like very contrived, very fabricated. I'm like, and like about halfway through the game, I'm like, is this just Ravenbeak? And we just don't know it yet because that game isn't anywhere near being developed.
Incredible.
And I got out of Metroid Fusion and I'm like, no, I legitimately think Ravenbeak is pulling the strings here.
I think
so.
And
it makes sense.
The computer feeds you the information about the SAX exactly the same way he feeds the information about the EMI.
Right. Well, and his goal was to get control of that technology anyway.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I was like, oh wow.
Even bigger reveal. Yeah.
One of the things that that really bothered me about the gameplay was trying to recover hit points, like being used to Super Metroid and original Metroid.
Like, yeah.
Well, sure, but like the pickups just were static. They would sit there and you jump and you get it. Yeah. Trying to collect the X.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Such a nuisance, and like
because if you're not fast enough, it will fly away and turn into a. Well,
you're also used to dread, which just absorbs.
I like that. I actually like that in this
game. Dread, it literally just flies.
I used to it; it was fine. But having just like the most recent Metroid game that I played was Super, and I'm just used to the pickups just sitting there.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, this is frustrating."
Did you absorb them too with the charge beam? That's what happens in.
I don't remember.
Maybe I'm just insane, but like, I don't know. I only started using the charge beam. I started using the charge beam like way too late. I should have been using it.
I don't think you can absorb them with the charge beam.
That's Metroid Prime, but I forgot if it was also used in like Super.
Oh, okay. It's a Prime. Well, if it's a Prime thing that does line up, they might
could be in that. That's why I'm like, is it in the others too?
In fact, the two synchronized. I would love to see how that works.
They do synchronize. Yeah, I did that when I had Fusion back in the day before it all got fucking stolen. You unlock like a Fusion suit, and it's really dope.
Yeah,
that is really cool.
Actually, you also unlock the original Metroid, if I'm not mistaken. You can play that, and that's how I first played that game. Was on Metroid Prime. Oh, there's like an art gallery also and some other shit.
Yep.
They like really rewarded you for having both games. Yeah, at least on my end. I don't know about your end. Fusion. I never like. I don't know.
The art, as I said, is absolutely top notch. Everything for considering the technological limitations of the Game Boy Advance, that art could not possibly be better. I don't think.
It's amazing.
It is so beautiful, and playing it on the big TV, all up-resed and beautified by the Retron, just made it that much better. Like I sat down, fired up the opening intro screen, the press start screen, and I immediately like, oh my god, I got to take a picture of this and send it to the guys because Paul was incredibly jealous.
I was. I still am. So yeah, this is my favorite Metroid game, and so to be able to play it like that is too cool.
Yeah.
You know what? I can play it like that though, because I have this on, the Wii U. I just don't have that hooked up right now.
That was the best eShop, I think.
It did have the best eShop. Yeah.
But Wii U, I will say about the Wii U, I suppose you can use the classic controller for the Wii, but actually being able to sit here with a wired Super Nintendo controller, which is my favorite controller, well documented, and play such a great Metroid game was something else.
Yeah,
the music was awesome. Like, it's very subtle. It doesn't get stuck in your head, but it definitely plays on the classic Metroid themes, and you noticeably feel more suspense when the game wants you to feel suspense. You feel less suspense when you're just wandering around collecting stuff. The musical cues are absolutely spot on. They did a really awesome job with that. Same with the sound design. It's all basically perfect. And again, playing it through the speakers or my headset or whatever I happened to be using at the time really made that a lot better than just playing it out of the tiny Game Boy speakers. How long did it take me? Really not that long. I think total gameplay was like, I think it said, actually, no, hold on. I have this written down. It took me.
I'm going to find out what my dog's barking at. Continue.
Yep. It took me 5 hours and 16 minutes.
Damn, that's nothing.
Really not that long. It's pretty quick. And yeah, that's, was it difficult? I mean, it's Metroid. Yes, it's a little difficult, but it does. This is the first one where the game starts to tell you, it starts to like give you environmental cues as to what to shoot, what, whether or not you can advance or go back. So I think in that sense, it was a little bit less difficult than Super, for example. You get trapped in a room, you're like, okay, now I need to just blast the bejesus out of everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
And once you get the power bomb, you're just like, okay, I entered a new room. I'm going to power bomb the hell out of it, and we'll see where we need to go from here. Bombing things specifically would reveal your path almost every single time. Would I play a sequel? I already did.
We already did.
overall rating and impression. Let's see. I gave Dread, what did I say? An 8.7.
Wow, that's weak.
This one is better.
I think that's a really fair score for Dread.
Yeah. This one is better than Dread. I think this is like a 9.1.
Yeah.
9.1.
This is my favorite Metroid game.
I gave Dread a 9.5, I think.
Yes, you did. I did look at, so my mom actually found my cartridge in the attic, and that's how I ended up with it. I was about to order it for $100 on eBay. Glad I didn't have to do that, but I would have. I would absolutely have done that.
I've thought about doing it because I know I have it like on flashcards and stuff, but I used to have this game and I freaking loved it, and it'd be worth having again, you know?
Yeah, I've started doing this thing where any Game Boy games that are relevant for a series, I'll start putting inside the Switch case. So like all my Mega Man Zero games are inside the Mega Man Zero case. And I definitely put the Fusion cartridge right in the Dread case, the Steelbook, because it has earned its place in my video game Hall of Fame. Absolutely 100%. And this is the first time I've played it all the way through myself. So I felt a good sense of accomplishment when I finished it.
Dude, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, me too.
It's such a good game. And you were talking, sorry, I had to run away because my dog was barking at literally nothing. But
usual.
But you were talking about the music, and the music, like you said, I think it's like perfect for a Metroid game. It's one of the things that I didn't like about Dread, is that in Dread it's too busy all of the time.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a theme throughout the entire game that like made it feel less like a Metroid game to me than previous installations, because one of the things that I think is great about the older Metroid games is the subtlety of everything.
Yes, exactly. And I think it toes right up against that line. I think it is right. It is absolutely perfect in terms of what it gives you both visually and auditorially.
Yeah.
The fact that it actually has backgrounds where original Metroid 2 and Super Metroid don't, that it's just kind of black in the background, or it's solid color. Fusion does a really good job where the backgrounds don't distract you, but they are definitely there, and they're definitely worth taking note of. Especially the underwater segments really feel like you're underwater for the first time in the franchise.
The one thing about Fusion that I don't particularly care, it doesn't bother me a ton, but like, because you're in a space station rather than on a planet, things feel a little more confined.
Yep.
But and less mysterious in some ways. But I still think this game pulls that off very well. So
yeah, while you were away, Paul, I mentioned this is the first time in the franchise we actually get a little bit of railroading. And environmental cues.
Yeah.
And I really do think a quality Metroidvania does give you some level of, I don't know if obviousness is a word, but like some level of guidance, some level of environmental guidance to help you out and to help you not feel stuck.
Right.
There was never in Fusion and in Dread, there was never a time where I was like, nope, I am completely stuck. I actually don't know where to go from here. Right. I was able to figure it out almost every single time.
Almost too much in both of the games, I think, for me personally. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Right on. Is that all we got?
So good.
It is.
So good.
It is. Yeah. All right, let's switch back and let's talk about video game generation some more.